The day my boss offered me $250,000 to marry her, I was eating a gas station sandwich in my truck and wondering how I was going to keep the lights on. My bank account had less than $80. My mother needed medical treatment. My younger brother was one missed tuition payment away from dropping out of college. And I was sitting alone in a parking lot trying to convince myself that things would somehow get better. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it. It was my boss, Victoria Hayes. Victoria wasn't the kind of person who called employees directly. She owned one of the largest construction companies in the state. People like me usually only saw her during company meetings or holiday parties. I answered immediately. "Hello, Daniel, I need to speak with you privately," she said. Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. Did I do something wrong? Actually, you're the only person I trust. An hour later, I was sitting across from her in a quiet restaurant. She looked exhausted, not physically tired, emotionally broken. I had never seen her like that before. Victoria was known for being confident, powerful, and impossible to intimidate. Yet that evening, she looked like someone carrying a weight she could no longer bear. She folded her hands together. "I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" She took a deep breath. "I need you to marry me." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't process what she just said. But Victoria wasn't smiling. She was completely serious. "I'll pay you $250,000. The laughter died instantly. "What? It won't be a real marriage," she said quickly. "At least not the way people think." I stared at her. This had to be a prank. Except Victoria didn't prank people, ever. She explained everything. Her grandfather had built the family fortune decades ago. According to an old clause in his trust, control of the family company would transfer to the next generation only if Victoria was married before her 35th birthday. That birthday was less than 3 weeks away. If she failed, the company would fall under the control of her uncle, Richard, a man she clearly despised. "He'll destroy everything my grandfather built," she said quietly. "Why not marry your boyfriend?" Her eyes lowered. "He left 6 months ago." The pain in her voice told me not to ask further. "Why me?" That question seemed to surprise her. "Because you're honest." I almost laughed again. Honest wasn't exactly a quality people paid $250,000 for. She continued. 3 years ago, when one of our workers got hurt on site, you stayed with him in the hospital all night. I remembered. The man had no family nearby. Anyone would have done it. Apparently not. Last Christmas you organized a fundraiser for an employee whose house burned down. People needed help. Exactly. Victoria leaned forward. You help people when there's nothing in it for you. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she slid a contract across the table. The arrangement would last 1 year. No romantic obligations. No deception beyond the legal marriage itself. At the end of 12 months, we could quietly divorce. In return, I would receive $250,000. Enough to save my family. Enough to change our lives. It felt wrong. It felt crazy. But it also felt impossible to refuse. 3 days later, we were married. And that's when everything became complicated. Because the more time I spent around Victoria, the more I realized the woman everyone feared wasn't who they thought she was. The media portrayed her as cold and ruthless. The truth was completely different. She secretly paid employees medical bills. She funded scholarships. She donated millions without putting her name on anything. One evening I caught her delivering groceries to a retired worker who was too proud to ask for help. She begged me not to tell anyone. "People deserve dignity," she said. That sentence stayed with me. The longer our arrangement continued, the harder it became to think of it as merely a contract. We became friends. Real friends. We ate dinner together, shared stories, laughed more than either of us expected. And for the first time in years, I saw Victoria genuinely happy. Then her uncle entered the picture. Richard Hayes was everything she claimed. Arrogant, manipulative, cruel. The first time we met, he looked me up and down like I was dirt on his shoe. 3 weeks later, He invited me to his office. Alone. I knew it was a bad idea. I went anyway. He poured himself a drink and got straight to the point. How much did Victoria pay you? I froze. He smiled. So it's true. I stood. I don't know what you're talking about. Sit down. His voice carried the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Then he opened a drawer. Inside sat a check. $500,000. My breath caught. Double what Victoria had offered. Richard slid it toward me. Leave. What? Disappear. I couldn't stop staring at the number. $500,000. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. My mother's medical bills would vanish. My brother's education would be secure. I could buy a house, start a business, change everything. Richard leaned back. One signature and it's yours. The room felt smaller, hotter, dangerous. You don't even have to explain yourself. Just file for divorce and walk away. I swallowed hard. What happens to Victoria? A cold smile spread across his face. That's not your concern. But it was. That was the problem. Because somewhere between the fake wedding and the late-night conversations, Victoria had become someone I cared about deeply. I looked at the check one final time, then pushed it back across the desk. Number. His smile disappeared. No, I won't do it. For the first time, genuine anger flashed in his eyes. You understand what you're turning down? Yes, $500,000. I stood. Some things cost more. Then I walked out. I didn't tell Victoria. At first, I thought protecting her meant handling it myself. That decision nearly ruined everything. A month later, Richard launched a full attack. Anonymous rumors appeared online. Questions about our marriage. Accusations. Investigations. People started digging. The pressure became unbearable. One night Victoria finally confronted me. Is there something you're not telling me? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had trusted me when she didn't have to. The woman who spent her life helping people while expecting nothing in return. The woman I had somehow fallen in love with. And I realized keeping secrets wasn't protecting her. It was hurting her. So I told her everything. The offer, the check, the meeting, every detail. When I finished, silence filled the room. Victoria looked away. I couldn't read her expression. Then tears appeared in her eyes. Actual tears. I thought you'd accepted. What? She nodded. My uncle hinted that he'd spoken to you. The pain in her voice hit me like a punch. For weeks I've been waiting for you to leave. My heart broke. Victoria, why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you worrying. She laughed sadly. Do you know what hurt most? I shook my head. I realized losing the company wouldn't be as painful as losing my friend. Neither of us spoke. The truth hung between us. Raw, honest, terrifying. Then she whispered something that changed my life. You matter more to me than any company ever could. I felt my chest tighten, because I knew exactly what she meant, and because I felt the same way. Months later, Richard made one final move. He challenged the legitimacy of our marriage in court. If he won, Victoria would lose everything. The hearing attracted attention from everywhere. Employees, investors, media. Everyone waited to see what would happen. Then something incredible occurred. People started showing up. Hundreds of them. Employees whose medical bills Victoria had secretly paid. Families she'd helped. Students whose scholarships she'd funded. Workers she'd protected. One by one, they shared their stories. Not because she asked them to. Because kindness leaves footprints, and eventually those footprints lead people back to you. The courtroom overflowed with gratitude. Richard sat there stunned. For years he'd measured success by money. That day he discovered another kind of wealth existed. The kind earned through compassion. The judge ruled in Victoria's favor. Richard lost. The company remained hers. The courtroom erupted. People cried, hugged, celebrated. But through all of it, I only looked at Victoria. Because something mattered more than the verdict. When the crowd finally cleared, she approached me. Neither of us spoke immediately. We didn't need to. After everything we'd survived together, words seemed unnecessary. Finally she smiled. The kind of smile that reaches the soul. You know, she said softly, our contract expires next week. I laughed. I know. So what happens now? The question hung in the air. A year earlier, I would have answered logically, professionally, safely. But life had taught me something important. The greatest things rarely begin safely, they begin honestly. So I took her hand. The same hand that had once offered me a business arrangement. The same hand that had spent years quietly helping others. The same hand I never wanted to let go. "How about," I said, "we stop pretending?" Tears filled her eyes again. This time they weren't tears of pain, they were tears of hope. And when she nodded, I knew something beautiful had happened. A marriage that began with money had transformed into something priceless. Not because either of us needed saving, but because kindness had brought two broken people together and shown them that love often arrives disguised as something else. Sometimes it looks like a contract, sometimes it looks like a second chance, and sometimes, when you're lucky enough to recognize it, it becomes the greatest gift you'll ever receive.